Hello everybody and welcome to episode 64 of Competitive Magic with the Karnies. I'm your host from Italy, Andrea Mengucci, and joining me as always we have Javier Dominguez from
Hello
Spain.
everyone.
And Anthony Lee from Australia.
Hola.
Welcome to 2024. This is the first episode of the new year, and I am joined by my two friend and co-host to, just start this new year talking about Magic every week. How does that sound to you?
Pretty good.
Pretty good.
Oh.
All right, so we had a long time of vacation and, eating some great Italian and Spanish food, me and Javier, I'm sure. But we want to know more about the Australian Christmas traditions. Do you guys do something in particular? For New Year's, for example?
Not really. Like, we have the Christmas kangaroo, but for New Year, we don't really have too much that goes on. I mean, we don't have that many unique animals, Like, we have the kangaroo that delivers Christmas presents, and we have the platypus that has poisonous spurs, and the koalas that have chlamydia. But other than that, not too much going on. So... yeah, New Year's just, you get some fireworks. It's all good.
Yeah, so the 31st of December, they always have the news always give that Sydney already is in the new year and they have the big firework and stuff. But you told me that something changed this year in Australia. You guys didn't do many fireworks.
Oh yeah, I don't know. There's nothing special about that. Just some budget cuts. I don't know. They didn't do fireworks over the river. It was really funny because lots of people just assumed there'd be fireworks. Because I mean, who's reading like the local government announcements or whatever, So a bunch of people went down to the river, thought there'd be fireworks, and there weren't fireworks. So I don't know.
All the kangaroos.
That's about it, really.
That's all the kangaroos. No fireworks.
No, yeah, just kangaroos. No fireworks. I'm afraid. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, that is something that I really hope gets more popular. I really dislike the whole like fire and I don't know. I'm not kind of scared to that more than attracted. So I like that of Australia. Among other differences between our country management, let's say, but that's one more thing I like.
Yeah, we've run a budget before.
All right. Yeah, but. Okay, what about you, Javier? I heard you also had some vacation in this
Yeah,
time.
I actually went to the south, to Almeria, to eat a lot of ice creams and enjoy the good weather. I actually love going there on Christmas time because, weather's good. And I also played a lot of Vintage Cube once I got home. And it's like the first time I played so many cubes since, like in the last years. And I like them a lot. It's very fun. And it definitely helped me, to feel like I want to play a lot of Magic again. I got this feeling a lot, and I've been trying to be somewhat serious about it. Obviously, like not serious because it's Cube and I do it for fun in a way, but I was trying to like get better, like review the drafts and just trying to play the games very well, which I did not succeed at because playing the Cube games is actually very hard to do that. But I've been just enjoying a lot of like Magic overall. I also played Timeless in Arena for fun, like being on the sofa, just playing Timeless on the iPad. That's also a type of Magic I do enjoy a lot. So yeah, that's been pretty much my holidays. Well, I also did an interview for Humans of Magic that should be out, I don't know, in some weeks or something. But it was pretty good, I will say. Like it was there were some interesting questions that I had to think through to answer, and I think it was enjoyable for me, so something to check out once it comes out. And yeah, that's it for me.
Yeah, I listen to the Humans of Magic a lot. They interviewed Kalk recently, and I love that interview, so I'll definitely listen to yours as well.
Yeah, Javier's underselling it. It's going to be a banger. I know some of the questions that were asked, they were very good questions, and, I think James is a great interviewer, and Javier is a great interviewee. I think he's underselling. I think it's going to be a fantastic interview. I'm actually very interested to hear this one. So, and I mean, I actually know Javier, and I'm very excited to listen to it. So if you don't know Javier, you should be even more excited, I think. But I mean, Javier, you only talked about Magic. What about non-Magic exploits? Did you learn anything new over the holiday?
Well, I sense that this is a trap question because of how you ask it.
No, never.
But I don't think I did. I mean, you can probably line in
no cultural expansion?
cultural expansion.
I think Anthony's referring to some new music artists
Oh
you might
yeah,
have discovered.
Anthony is trying. Anthony is trying with some degree of success to make me an avid listener of Taylor Swift. So yeah, that's a route he's having me on now. He's succeeding, relatively speaking. So Spotify says it's the artist I'm listening the most so far this month. So
Let's go.
That's it.
Would you
What's your favorite song?
would you say you are
I knew you could travel.
Yeah.
okay?
Bang.
Would you say you are a Swiftie now?
I mean, I would not go as far. I'm just discovering it. I'm starting. I'm a late time.
Okay.
Maybe Swifty. We'll see. We'll see. Let's go back to
Better
Magic.
than never.
All right. Speaking about Magic, we had, of course, I haven't traveled very much for Magic in these weeks, but I did go to a tournament, a very exciting tournament last weekend called the Domination, and there was a lot of people there. I attended the main event Modern, but it was honestly just a big event for every format. Really, you wanted to play Modern, Legacy, Pauper, and even the sealed qualifier, which the new season has started, and it can be either standard or sealed. So this is definitely something that you may want to be interested if you want to qualify to the next RC. But yeah, so my tournaments were Modern and Legacy, and let's just kick off with that one, shall we?
Yeah.
So on Saturday I played this event. It was 217 players, 8 rounds of Swift, and I just did not lose. I played
At all.
Cabal Coffers, and yeah, I played Cabal Coffers, went 6-0, double ID, and then the traditional top 8 split equal prizes as every Italian tournament goes. And yeah, that's it. I mean, I play Cabal Coffers, which is, you would say it's an unusual choice, but I actually love the One Ring controlled gameplay, and I think that Cabal Coffers is slightly better than Tron. I played this a couple of times on my stream. I tried a lot of different builds, and eventually this is the one I settled on with the Expedition map. And this is something that I haven't seen around, but honestly just gave the deck so much consistency at finding the Urborg plus Cabal Coffers without hurting the chances of not functioning. What do I mean with this? It's like most lists play 4 Urborg, 4 Coffers, but obviously that gives you more chances of drawing like 2 to 3 of each, and just not having a proper game, because well, if your hand has 1 Swamp, 2 Cabal Coffers, well, that's a mulligan. If your hand has 2 Urborgs and a Field of Ruin, sure, maybe you have your first 2 land drops, but you're actually you may not function. So I reduced those corner cases while raising the number of times that you go turn 1 map, turn 2 crack it, turn 3 have the combo ready. So yeah, kind of use it like a Tron deck, but with a lot of more interactions and without the late game off green Tron. But yeah, I want to hear your guys' opinion. I know that you weren't that high on Coffers for your PT preparation, but would you change that? Would you say that if you tried with the Expedition map, you would have had a different opinion of the deck?
Whoa. What does it mean? We tried the Expedition map Coffers. Just making this clear. Making this clear right away.
Yeah. We were thorough. We did our homework. But I want to talk a little bit about the Expedition map thing, because I think I have a slightly different view on this to you. I think maybe the Expedition map improves the deck, but I don't really see it as improving the consistency of the deck exactly, right? So the way I kind of see this is that Expedition map makes you more consistent in a specific regard, which is at doing your powerful thing because you search for Coffers more often, you have Coffers more often. But the thing about map is that it's not a very good card to draw in multiples, and it's often not a card that you want in a lot of your natural draws, I think, right? Like, for example, if you drew the thing is that the thing about the map is that it's not a land when you most need a land, and you most need a land when you don't have many lands. And it's not a spell when you most need a spell, right? So it actually reduces your functionality, your consistency in terms of just being a deck of lands and spells. So it increases your consistency in a certain way, in terms of doing the Cabal Coffers Urborg thing, but it reduces your consistency in terms of being a fair deck. So the way I see Expedition map is not necessarily an increase in consistency, which just means I do one thing more often. I see it as I do the more powerful thing more powerful thing more consistently at the expense of playing a fair game less commonly. So I think that's an interesting direction to push the deck. Like, if you want your Coffers deck to be a little more powerful at the expense of playing a fair game less well, then I think it might be good. And, if that's not what you're looking for, maybe it's not the best choice. But I could also see it, a lot of people think of Expedition Map as a 4 or 0 off card, because that's what we see it of, that's how we see it in Tron, right? Because Tron is very much a deck that's very much going for, it needs that raw power, because it just has to make Tron every time. But that's not really true for Coffers. Like, the whole point of Coffers being good is that you can do the Tron thing where you go way over the top of a deck like Scam, but you don't have to, but you don't have to be as all in, right? So I think you don't have to necessarily play 4 copies of Map, like maybe 0, 1, 2, 3. It's like Sheldred. I could see any number of this card being right. I'm not saying 4 is wrong. I'm just saying that it's very easy to assume that 4 is right, and it could be some different number. But that's how I see the Map as a card anyway, with relation to the Coffers deck.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot to unpack here, actually. Go ahead.
No, I wanted to say that I personally love the map for the Takenuma aspect of it. So, like, it happened a lot. In fact, I beat Blue-White Control in 5-0, always with Takenuma, even the second one. Like, going map for Takenuma, get back Karn, play Karn, which, you countered the turn before, and I play it again the turn after with, 2 Coffers in play, whatever, and you just go, like, Karn, Sundering Titan, blow up 5 lands or whatever, and you win. Like, this is something that, like, I told you as a joke, and I told to my streamer as a joke, that it feels like old Tron when you go get Ayovugin with map, when you already have a lot of mana in play. That's why I added a second Takenuma. This sounds like a joke, but, like, often with Ayovugin, you would get Emrakul and the game would be over, right? You wouldn't get multiple things with Ayovugin. And this is similar. Like, you get back Karn once, and Karn is over. Like, just cast it with a lot of mana, and it wins the game by itself. So I felt that the Takenuma, of course, it's not a swamp, so it makes Cabal Coffer worse when you play it. And it's legendary, so you may draw 2. So it has some problems. Everything may have some problems, but I think that really made the 4 Expedition map worth it. If I had to change something, actually, about this, would be to cut 1 Cabal Coffers and go down to 2 Cabal Coffers. Because the games where you go, like Swamp, Demolition Field, Cabal Coffers, and you can cast your 4-drop, are, incredibly bad. Like, you're actually losing a game because you can't cast your 4-drop on turn 4 with this deck very often. So, so I really like the 4 Expedition map, and I like that. Again, I've never played this deck with map before. This was my first time. Like, I played 1 League of Magic Online, I 5-0'd, I played this tournament, I went 6-0, I played another league the day after, I went 3-2, but still, in my very reduced sample size, this deck felt very powerful with the Expedition map angle.
Well, I mean, I did play with, I explored this archetype specifically quite a bit. I don't know if Anthony remembers, but I actually played a lot with it because I felt this was a reasonable option at the beginning. Then I eventually settled on Tron, but there's a lot to unpack, as I was saying. The Takenuma thing is important, but it's actually somewhat similar to, like, Ursa Saga, more than to Eye of Ogin, in a way, where you're getting sort of like an overpriced spell in a way, and that's actually much better once you have Tron, and it's the same here. Like, I think Eye of Ogin is a different card because it could let you beat stack interaction, which is often an issue in these situations, and you cannot get through stack interaction that easily here. But I guess it's the same concept.
Yeah, you have Emrakul.
I know, but here. You need to tutor for you don't tutor for Emrakul.
Yeah. I know.
Which, by the way, saying this makes me think this could be a one-off Ursa Saga deck for this exact reason as well. But that's something worth considering.
I thought about it. But the reason why I gave up on it is that in this deck, you don't... like in Tron, for example, Urza Saga, turn 1, can turn into a land because you get to Tron on turn 4. Here, I think that is way too slow to turn Urza Saga into a land. Like, it needs... So, like, if you go, like, Urza Saga turn 2 to make constructs on turn 3 and turn 4, it's not going to be a land for a long time before you get your map, your coffers, you know what I mean? Like, the mana engine is much, much slower than Tron. Like, on turn 4, you go up 1 mana. On turn 5, you go up 2 mana. So it's like, this is what
the situation where you make constructs is exactly the same speed as Tron. So that's not the thing. Is it leaves like adding Saga here lets you have a non-counterable card you can get out of map, and that has some upsides. And also, you're facing like
I understand what
Dalthy
you mean.
Walker, for example. Having access to Saga is actually better than having access to Takenuma because your graveyard is probably very empty. In that game, like I'm saying, like this could be a one of Saga deck for that reason. Like the reasons you actually explained.
This deck though suffers Dalthy way less than Tron because you have so many removal spell. Like it's rare that you are stuck under a Dalthy, unlike with Tron, where of course you have like 3 removal spells. So
well, but this is also a deck that does not fall to Dalthy as much. So there's also more games where you actually play a long game. With Tron, you usually use die to it. Here, you actually have more play.
Yeah.
I just feel like this could work. I'm not, I did not try the Saga here because once I got to the Saga point, I was already playing Tron. But I think this could be a reason. So more things. Urborg and Cabal Coffers. Yeah. So I actually tried at some point like 3 Urborg for Cabal Coffers because Cabal Coffers is awkward because of the development, but it does get better in multiples, right? So that's something I actually considered for a while. I will be surprised if 2 is correct though. But I think the map, like I think Anthony is right in terms of like what map does not need to be a 4-off. I think that this is actually a fair point. But I think as long as your toolbox on spells is right and good in the metagame, I think the card is too good on that regard. Like if you are interested in the effect, like you're playing big mana, right? So you get big mana with maps, so that's good. But if you have like 10 mana, drawing a map is kind of like drawing a spell, if you think about it. It's not very hard to transform that into a Sheoldred here. Maybe you need more than 10, but I think that's often good enough to play like enough maps. But I'm pretty sure I had like 2 or 3 maps most of the time though. So but seeing it this way, I think it's good. There's also more things. Why 3 Field of Ruin and 4 fields and not the other way around, Mengu?
Yeah, you're right. Field is better because it forces your opponent to shuffle.
Yeah, that's. I was asking because I didn't know if there was a reason.
You're right.
Yeah, okay.
No, it was totally random. Okay. But also, so is the number. Like 7 is. I don't know.
Can we? Is there a chance to try like other lands? Like, because we have 4 maps. Like, I mean, I get some of these are not swamps, but you can try stuff like Scavenger Grounds or like Spadruka Bog or whatever. They might have some utility otherwise, because I know, for example, the Cascade matchups are a little bit difficult with this deck, but if you had like one Badruka Bog or Scavenger Grounds or something, maybe being able to search for it with Expedition Map would help a lot or something, like the map opens up some options that maybe we didn't consider before.
Yeah, the problem is that every time you add a non-swamp, you make your Cabal Coffer worse, because like it just comes up that you have like 4 swamps and your map tutors Cabal Coffers, and that's great. Instead of having to go the whole combo, like you only need 1 piece. I just also like landing to play untapped, especially if you want to curve out like mapping to crack it into like push, whatever. Like, yeah, the again, if I had to make a change to the mana base, it would be 1 Cabal Coffers plus 1 swamp, but I would need to test it a bit more. This is something that I felt that I was just really running out of untapped land at the beginning. Where
it's also the situation where Coffers is the kind of card that when you lose because of Coffers, it's very obvious that you're losing because of Coffers. But it's not that obvious that you're winning because of Coffers, because it's not easy to see if you will have won the game otherwise, especially if in multiples or whatever. Like, they're obviously good, but it's not that easy to say, like, yeah, this second Coffer will actually cost me the game if it was a swamp. But either way, it's easy. So it's...
Yeah, I actually... There are some matchups where that's important. For example, against Rhinos, they have Mystical Dispute, even post sideboard. Or against Murktide, they have Spell Pierce. And sometimes Coffers lets you resolve like a ring through Dispute or through Spell Pierce on turn 4 or 5. And that's something that it's super good. Like the double Coffer draw is just...
Yeah, but if you cut the Coffers for a swamp, it's not easy to see where the swamp will be another Coffer. I'm saying like this is an extremely complicated thing to by experience. It's more like reasoning than experience. Sure. I feel like that.
Yeah, like Javi's talking about the observation, right? Yeah. Like he's just saying that like all the games you win because you could pay for Spell Pierce, your opponent just doesn't cast a Spell Pierce, right? So like you don't actually know 100% that it won you that game, even though it did. So that's really interesting to think about as well. Whenever we try these new changes like this, that we have to try to look more carefully for the invisible. as it were, well, the invisible changes, I suppose. That's a good point.
Yeah, because Swamp, Field of Ruin,
sure.
couple of Coffers, you always see it. Like every time it happens, you're seeing it. You're like, this is shit, And yeah, that's there's still more things to unpack here. Like you went for the Thoughtseize approach, which is something you talked about a long time ago, and it's definitely a big improvement to since the old couple Coffers decks. Like this deck is just much better than the ones we had before the PT. Right, like the people just made this deck better, and I think that's also a big part of why it's functional now. Right, like Thoughtseize is just like in terms of power level, just a very good card because how disruptive it is for different matchups. Like it just can win so many games by discarding a Cascade card, for example, right? And the issue here, though, is like the sideboard issue Anthony actually presented here in a podcast was like, you actually don't have much flexibility in the sideboarding. You either play Explosives and Chalices or Leyland of the Void, and the current targets, that's it, right? That you have access to exactly one card. So you're often like sandwiched between like a situation where you cannot have sideboard out cards for the matchups, which means like you end having like Fatal Pushes against Control, and Damnation are March of the other, like Black March. Maybe you can sideboard some of them, but not too many anyway, because you still need the card to be as good as you can. But I think that this weakness still remains, but Thoughtseize makes it like it's less heavy in a way, right? Because you can still sneak games, and you can actually manipulate the game a little bit more towards a game state where those cards are good. Like if you need to discard Shard Typhoons out of control, like if you have a lot of removal, right? Like you don't care about the card that much. And I think that's, I don't know, I just see this deck and I can see why this wins. And I actually think, you asked this question, I think, Mengu, but I just think this deck is better than Tron right now. I think it's better position. I think this deck has legs. And in my opinion, this deck is strictly underrated by, internet.
Yeah.
So this deck has problems, like, clearly, that it loses to Amulet Titan, which I place as first in my power ranking, so registering a deck that I don't want to say it's a game loss because obviously like you can't win the matchup, but it's a easy bad matchup, and also against Living End. Those two matchups are just like really bad. And then of course on the other side of the medal you have Blue Red Murktide and Scam, which this deck is very good against. So it could be seen as a like how do you say, like metagame call, but also like this is just a functional deck that has like I think good and bad matchups at the top of the metagame.
Well, question, Mengu. Which deck do you think is better against Amulet, this or Tron?
It's probably.
That's something.
Because of the Field of Ruin, demolition field aspect of it.
Yeah, also there's like removal, right? Like Shielded Edict or even the March, they have to be good.
Also Thoughtseize.
Yeah, Thoughtseize.
Yeah, Thoughtseize, Shielded Edict. I cut... As you can see, my sideboard Karn tools is not as good as Tron. I don't have Liquid Metal Coating, which is, good against the Amulet. I don't have Stone Brain. Those are cuts that I made in order to have a better time against the Cascade decks. And also Collective Brutality, which is another card that is very versatile, because I set it in against kind of like everyone, honestly, even against Doty Void Walker. I set it in against like Cascade, Murktide, of course Burn, Control decks, because you mentioned the thing about Fatal Push, but against Control deck, I actually had to keep 2 Fatal Push post sideboard. I set it in 2 Brutality, 1 Cityscape Leveler, 1 Ring, and actually I was able to win the game because I played Cityscape Leveler on Narset when my opponent had Counterspell, Mana Open, and Days Undoing in end. And, any other card would have lost me the game. So, it is, yeah.
I actually did test the matchups. I think Tron is probably a little bit better just because you're so much more powerful with the nut draws on the play. Like, I think if you get to turn 3 one of your Karns as Tron, it's actually not so bad. Like, I remember playing this matchup a bunch with Simon Nielsen leading...
What do you Karn for?
We got coding a lot of the time. You have to be a bit careful about when you're coding, but that was like a really big difference. Like, if you get to turn 3 Karn, you're actually like pretty favored. The problem is that like just trying to Thoughtseize them, like you still don't win those games very often. So like you will be sort of in the game a little bit more often because you can do stuff like, you can kill their Titan or Thoughtseize them to buy a little bit of time, but then you still end up losing. Whereas Tron, like, you're way more likely to just do nothing and die, but you're also a little bit more likely to win the die roll, play a Karn, and steal the game. Like, it's not great. Obviously, I really don't want to play against Amulet as Tron, but it felt like it must be overall a little bit better because of the proactive power of Tron being able to just steal more games when your fundamental plan is like otherwise not very well. It doesn't line up very well against Amulet. I think it's obviously tough either
I think
way.
if you bring in the chalices,
yeah, even then,
I think if you bring in the
it's
chalices
a little tough.
and go chalice on 0, then Thoughtsis becomes very good because you only care about the Car Primeval Titan. You don't care about Tolera West.
I really think that the Amulet deck is more resilient than people give it credit for, I think. Yeah, stuff like that is just not as powerful against Amulet, it seems. They're much better at fighting through it, I think. Like, it's just not that hard for them to... Because you don't really pressure them enough. So, like, they have a little bit of time to undo whatever is stopping them from comboing off. Whether that's a Thoughtseize that means they need a couple extra draw steps, or literally removing a card like Chalice that is preventing them from using their pact, and then they can just go off on you, or they can just like naturally hardcast their stuff because you don't really stop that. You don't really prevent them from having the time to do that. So
yeah, and I mean, I'm not claiming that this deck is good against Amulet.
Oh, of course not. Yeah,
definitely. Like the lack of threats, the lack of clock is what pains the most.
Yeah,
this deck
so
against combo.
Basically, I think it's a matter of like which deck is better against them when they get unlucky, because they kind of have to get unlucky for either one to win. I think Tron is better at capitalizing on the misfortune of the Amulet player, I think.
Yeah, like turn Formula Mock 10 of times, right? Yeah, like that's...
yeah.
Yeah, I appreciate the in-depth talk about this deck, because obviously it's one of my strongest consideration for the upcoming regional championship in Ghent in just a few weeks. So yeah, thank you guys for the talk. I think also the listeners will love that. A card that we haven't talked about that was a nice addition and helped me a lot this weekend was the Titan Blade. I actually end up killing something very cool, like a Sign of Draco, which I couldn't kill with my Fatal Push, thanks to it in the sideboard. Yeah, and it was just cool. Like very often I would just 4 mana get Karn, get that one on empty board just to have an extra removal spell, and then it would like bolt my Karn and like I already had the ring. Like it was just nice. I think that just a cool addition, and
it seems good to me.
A new card too.
Like it just makes a lot of sense. Like all of these cards that like add a dimension to Karn are massive, right? Like it doesn't take something super strong. It just needs to give you a dimension you didn't have before, and Tithing Blade is perfect, I think.
Yeah, just think of how many times you get the might just because it's a creature. Imagine you had a bad like Warping Well on the sideboard of Tron to get with Karn. That would be great, right? Like, yeah, I think it makes sense for this card to be good. I like it actually.
Oh, I got
and the way.
Go on.
No, go ahead.
I was gonna ask. Did you think of Tithing Blade because it was so good in Pauper?
No, actually, I got it suggested in an Instagram comment.
Oh.
I posted. I posted about this about my 5-0, and one of the comment was, "Have you tried Titan Blade in the sideboard?" I'm like, "Oh, that's actually super smart." And so I made some changes from that 5-0 with it, and yeah. So again, I made an Instagram short about the Titan Blade. Thanking that person. So
shout out to that. But I mean, how often do you hear that? How often do you hear where did you get the idea for this card? We talk about the cards like the Talisman of Resilience or whatever that came into our deck, and not often you hear the person say, "Well, it came from me. It came to me from Instagram." That's awesome. I love that.
Yeah. I mean, similar to the Questing Druid in Murktide, I went to an RC and I saw a player playing it, and that's how like the card blew up.
Oh,
so yeah, very often. I mean. This is definitely one of the teachings of my mom that was like, try to take as much as you can from other people, and yeah.
Wow,
that's something.
Okay, well, I didn't know that. I didn't know that you got the Questing Druid idea that way. That's quite something. I like that. Cool.
Yeah. All right, so this was the kind of like a very long part, half an hour on Black Coffers. I hope the listeners will enjoy that. But let's get into something else that happened. So the whole top 8 was a super diverse top 8, as often happens with just 2 Murktides as a deck with multiple than 1 copy. And then you had like the classic Scam, Yugmoth, Rhinos, the classic. But there was also 2 large tournament in America. Cincinnati was the location. There was a 20K in 2 days and a 10K in one single day. To go quickly over them, but the first place was Yawgmoth, beating Blue White Control in the final. So there were a couple of Yawgmoths, I believe, in the top 4. And if we will look at the Modern Showcase. Yawgmoth is definitely a deck that you see kind of everywhere. Like, you just look at the top 16, top 32, and there's just so many Yawgmoths. And I feel like this is maybe the most popular deck in Modern right now. What do you guys think? What would you say is the most popular deck leading into the RC? You think it's Rhinos, but it doesn't convert as much as Yawgmoth? Maybe that would be an easier way to put it.
I mean,
there's just an answer, right?
Yeah,
don't they? Yeah. They just tell us somewhere, don't they? Is it data somewhere?
Yeah, I mean, if I'm playing DRC and I have no idea what I'm doing, I will tell myself to play Rhinos because it's very good, but also very easy. I think we talked about this in other podcasts already, but like, it's an easy deck and it's good enough that it's, you can win, and it's a perfect deck to be the best.
Yeah, I think we talked about it before the LMS Barcelona, just after the ban.
Yeah, exactly. It still applies, right? Like, you do not play Yawgmoth if you have never played the deck in a tournament, right? You have to learn the deck a little bit before. I don't think Yawgmoth is like that hard as it looks, but it's still pretty hard compared to Rhino, so it makes sense for it.
Yeah, but the RC is still like, somewhat an important event that was like 2 months, and also you qualified there to with a modern RCQ, so I think a lot of people will like know what they're doing. It's not a different format of the one they qualified.
No, with. Absolutely, but you have to decide with time. That's the thing. Like, even if you're a motivated player, like play a lot, you cannot jump into a deck like 1 week before, or maybe 1 week, yes, but 2 days before. You need some time in advance to actually lock it or learn it or whatever. I think that, I don't know, it might be the most played deck. I will not expect Amulet to be the most played deck. I will expect Yawgmoth and Rhinos to be the most played deck. These two, definitely not.
Yeah. I think that Yawgmoth winning so much and being so popular is what scares me the most to register Blue and Murktide, honestly, because like, it's just so tough. Like, the matchup is just so tough. Like, anything this deck has is a problem for Blue and Murktide. Agatha, Orcish Bowmaster, Grist. Like, this deck
Cauldron,
is just
also.
A whole Halfling. Like, if they on top with Halfling, your counters don't work. Like, and it happens. It's not that you always have the 1 or 2 removals, but for them. So it's just, yeah. This is definitely a super scary deck.
Yeah, I felt like Yawgmoth was so good at like taxing all the. I always just felt like I just always have the wrong card against him. Like, sometimes my Ragavan is awesome. Like, when I'm on the play, it's actually kind of nice against this deck sometimes. But like, obviously, a lot of the time, Ragavan is like literally one of the worst cards in the format I could draw against Yawgmoth with Young Wolf and Bowmaster, especially on the draw. But then also what you say about like counters, like I want counter spells because of the non-creature spells and try to counter Yawgmoth, but then sometimes they have Halfling, and then sometimes I want a spot removal spell because it kills the Halfling, but then it's not good against the rest of their deck. And I just always feel like I just have the wrong cards against them. Like, it's really rough, I feel. And they don't give you the time to like use your card selection to have the right ones, which is like one of the strengths of the Murktide, right? So yeah, it felt really rough. Although I did also want to say, like, I mean, Yawgmoth is tougher than decks like Rhinos, but I would be careful of like overselling how easy it is, because I know there's a friend of mine who plays, all the local RCQs, is playing all the local RCQs with Rhinos, and I kept telling him, just play Rhinos, it's like the easiest deck ever, and then I'd watch all his matches and tell him like 3 things he did wrong every single game that would have changed the game. And at some point he's like, you've told me I've made like 7 game losing mistakes every tournament, right? And you told me this was the easiest deck? And I was like, yeah, I guess it's kind of a lie. I mean, the easiest is relative, like, you still probably shouldn't jump in without any experience.
All right. Let me clarify this.
Playing Magic,
Let me clarify this, Anthony. What I mean is, it is somewhat easy to play Rhinos up to like 80% of the win rate or whatever, right?
Okay.
I think getting the last percentage of Rhinos is actually extremely hard. There's the same thing as Burn, Playing Burn is very easy, but actually getting the last spaces of win rate in Burn, I think it's extremely complex. And Rhinos is also like this, I feel. There's some situations where you just do not play the Cascade because, that will trigger an event of tempo that do not interest you, whatever. Like, that those spots are extremely hard. But I don't think you need those spots for Rhinos to be acceptably good. But I agree. I agree. Like, to play Rhinos perfectly, I am not that sure that's harder than other decks. It's similar to, I I guess Tron is also like this a little bit in a way, right? Like it's very hard to play it very well, but it's easy to pick up and win some games. I think Randos is easier overall, but I think I would say it's the same concept in terms of difficulty. So yeah, just to be clear. Yeah.
I agree. Just wanted to make
All
it
right,
clear.
Javier, did you see that your old deck, Martyr of Sands, is once again back? It top 8 at the PTQ a few weeks ago, and now I see it in this top 8 of the 20K in Cincinnati.
I mean, I did
this one over there.
say, I mean, I do like this deck a lot. I like how it looks. I like the cards and the style, but calling this a Martyr of Sands deck is a little bit of an exaggeration. It plays one Martyr.
It's cheeky.
Clickbaity.
Well,
Clickbaity,
it's a little bit clickbaity, yeah. It's like playing one Martyr and 2 tutors for the Martyr. Like, it's, I don't know. The other thing that has, like, it's the area, which is very good in this kind of decks, but I think this is good, but this is a classic, like, answer deck, where I feel like this deck is good because it plays good cards and good answers, but I will be very skeptical if you tell me this is the very best way to put those cards at use, right? Like, okay, let's say you say Orcish Master, Teferi, Ring, and Leyline Binding and Shoulder are great. I want to play a deck like this. Sure, but then why are you playing Inspector, Giant Killer, Might, and Martyr, as the sauce? I will think there are better sauce there.
I don't know.
That even Fell of the Mirror Breaker, I don't know. That's my impression. But I appreciate the trolling.
So there was another. Yeah, for sure. There was another SEG 10K on Sunday, and the best deck. Sorry, and the winner. I meant to say the winner.
I'm right. All right. I'm gonna physically clap.
All right.
All right.
What am I looking at?
Merfolk.
Nemeth Nick. Yeah,
congratulations.
So this list
Nick.
is kind of like. So this list is very similar to the one that's been going around. I think this list top 4 the MTGO PTQ, except is playing one Castle of Interest over an island. And I swear, I played this deck this morning. I said, I'm not so sure on that Castle of Interest. And literally my first hand was Castle of Interest, Cavern of Souls, Ether Vial, Lord. Like, I couldn't curve out, it was funny. So yeah, I wouldn't recommend the Castle of Interest personally. But outside of that, Merfolk is a solid deck. I think it's still like the fact that Yawgmoth is the most popular deck puts a cap on, how good Merfolk is. Obviously also like struggling against the other cheap removal spell deck like Scam and Murktide. But outside of that, I think this deck should be good against like Amulet, it should be good against Cascade. So it's not the worst deck decision in Modern right now.
I mean, also look at the sideboard. Like, look at the sideboard. I am not sure. Like, if you're playing Yawgmoth post sideboard against Merfolk, are you even ahead with this sideboard? I'm not sure. Like, Subtlety, Dismember, and Cursed Totem, they are all 3 very good cards against Yawgmoth.
Yeah, it feels like that.
Yeah,
maybe it's okay. You have a plan. I don't know.
Like, Cursed Totem, it is a very good card. Like, it does kill people, like, very, very fast. Just Totem and just some creatures.
Yeah.
I'm just saying.
Speaking of Cursed Totem, did you guys see that the Elementals deck that top 8 the showcase had 4 Cursed Totem in the sideboard? Like, it's a 4-color Omnat with 4 Cursed Totem.
I love it.
Like, this is something that, the Yawgmoth players, I think they know that they're facing Cursed Totem almost any matchups. So they kind of like, I don't know, just sideboarding away, have like more whatever Poseidon.
It's very hard.
Or just less activity ability.
But it's very hard. Like, let's say you're playing
aggressive.
Yawgmoth against this 4-color and they have 4 totems. What are you going to do as a Yawgmoth player? Like, it's
No, but this was already, like, in theory, this was already a good matchup.
I know, but like you're playing this with Yawgmoth,
like,
I don't know how will I approach. I might even go like Fulminator Mage, hope the mana screw or something. Like, I don't know. Like, I think Yawgmoth is a extremely good deck, and it's very resilient to most kind of interactions, but it is not very resilient to specifically Totem, which is why Totem is played. Like, it's really not. Like, I think Totem is better against Yawgmoth than Chalice is against Cascade, for example, because it just affects the development. Like, I'm playing Yawgmoth sometimes, and they just play Totem, and my elves don't get mana. Like, I just cannot function sometimes. I just can't do anything else. But Chalice, I can still play Otaguaras and play Subtleties or whatever, So I think the card is, like, very hard to beat. Like, if Yawgmoth is the most played deck, and it has to face Totem every round, I think that makes it way less appealing to, as a deck to play for a tournament.
Yeah, that's definitely one of the strengths of Modern, is that it kind of has all the inbuilt protection and meta game.
Well, towards
I
some
like
decks,
that a
though,
lot,
that's the
for
thing. Like,
sure.
there was no card like this for Scam, right? It's true to some extent.
But yeah, but
It's only true to some extent.
yeah,
Like,
I mean, Scamet, you had Sanctifier and Vec or whatever. You had Fury.
well, I don't think those cards are comparable to what Curse Totem is. Like,
So isn't that Cursed Totem is just accessible, right? Like,
Yeah.
you have to be really specific to be able to cast Sanctifier on Vec, but any deck can just shove a Cursed Totem in there and be like, well, my Yawgmoth matchup's a bit better now, isn't it?
yeah, on
So,
top of
I think that's a significant difference.
There's even more because Scam already played Thartis and Grief, which is why it was so good. So you had 8 answers automatically to every card you could put. But Yawgmoth can play Thartis, and they probably should play some healthy amount of copies. But like, it's a deck that does actually not want to play Thartis. Like, every Thartis you put in your Yawgmoth deck, you're being like less functional in a way. Like, you're paying a high cost, right? If you put one more discard in Scam, let's say you played Inquisition of Cosmic or whatever, or Duress, your Scam deck will still be good, and that will be like still the way to approach the game. But in Yawgmoth, if you draw a hand with 2 Thoughtseize or whatever, well, then your hand is a little bit all dysfunctional in terms of like synergy. But then you need to play enough Thoughtseize so it's a reliable answer against Curse Totem. So I think this is a very complicated situation for a deck like Yawgmoth. If, Curse Totem will become like the stock 3 or 4 or whatever.
Yeah, the way I might distinguish them is that like Scam is actually a Thoughtseize deck, and it's hard to hate out Thoughtseize decks, but Yawgmoth would be a deck with Thoughtseize. So
Yep.
All these synergy decks that can play Thoughtseize are much worse because like every slot you pay that doesn't contribute towards your main plan actually affects all of your cards, which isn't really the case with the Thoughtseize decks like Scam that put the Thoughtseize first. Like, they build around having access to that disruption. I think that's a really important distinction to draw when you're looking at these decks and how hateable they are. In general, like, I think fair decks that have a fundamentally, kind of stock Magic game plan are going to be more resilient to hate. And that makes sense, right? They're more flexible, they have more generic good cards, it's harder to, like, pull all their pieces apart. Whereas with Yawgmoth, if you take out some key pieces, they're going to be left with, like, some Young Wolves or whatever. So I think that makes a lot of sense. Like, it's just how Modern has generally worked, I think.
Some more results that went on that MTGO P2Q, which was this like over 300 people tournament. There is a Merfolk in the top 4, and it doesn't play. I was like, what has he cut from the stock list? Because he plays 3 Dismember, 3 Force of Negation. It doesn't play any Tishana's Tidebinder. The card that was supposed to, make Merfolk great again, it's actually been cut from Merfolk, and still does well in the tournament.
Well, I don't think Tishana's Tidebinder, I don't think Merfolk is a good Tidebinder deck. I think I said when it was printed, I think the card that actually makes Merfolk good for real is Bodaling Hexcatcher. Like, this is the great Merfolk. I think it's taking time, but
lower.
I think that is the card.
Makes it better against combo
I am a big
decks.
believer of that card. I think that's just what makes Merfolk so good against the the Cascade combo decks and such. Yeah, I think Tishana's could be a 2-off or something, but I think the 3-mana card here does not pay off that well, and it was still very good against things like Tron and the such. But there's not that many good targets for it in Tron where you cannot actually pass mana up, for example, that often. It's with Rhinos, you have Violent Outburst and Tishana, and you can just dance with it, right? Merfolk does not have that luxury, and Merfolk also does not have the game. Like, you cannot craft a game plan with Merfolk where you actually delay the action towards a game state where you can do your thing, but also Tishana, which is something you can do with Rhinos. You can just sometimes hold into 6 mana, so you can do those things. Merfolk doesn't do that. Like, in Merfolk, if the game goes to turn 10, you're probably losing, right? So that makes Tishana worse. So I could see still. I think the cards are good enough to play some copies probably, but if you're having interaction that's better for the metagame, I can see this deck being totally functional without Tishana. I don't think Tishana is the reason for Merfolk to be good.
I think that actually makes a lot of sense. Because I think Javier's mentioned something before when he was talking about why Leyline Binding was so good in Modern, is that the less interaction you play, the more you care about being broad. But the converse also applies, right? So Merfolk is not a deck that's going to get to afford to play a lot of interaction, because of the fact that you have to play a lot of Merfolk, right, in your Ether Vials and whatnot. But Tishana's Tidebinder is specifically a kind of narrow answer, and it answers like different things to what a lot of other cards do efficiently. So it actually kind of makes sense that if you're going to have limited amounts of interaction, that more narrow ones like Tishana's Tidebinder less exciting. And the fact that it's a Murphy is actually less interesting because it's specifically an expensive one. Like, if you're going to play a bunch of Lords, an expensive Merfolk is actually appreciably worse than a cheaper one, right? Because you just care about having a Merfolk in play, and then it gets most of its stats from the synergies and Lords that you have. So that actually makes a lot of sense. Like, the fact that Merfolk is so different to the other decks that have used Tishana's Tidebinder so successfully actually is a decent indicator of why this card is like not necessarily good here. Because I think it is a more conditional card. Like, it's not just a generically good card in every deck. So yeah, that makes a lot of sense to me. I hadn't really thought about that because, it's kind of like, oh, Merfolk deck, and this is a good Merfolk, so maybe this Merfolk makes the Merfolk deck better, but actually doesn't really fit with what the other Merfolk do. Yeah, it actually makes a lot of sense to me.
A more interesting thing that went on is the winner, Xantosel, and he played one copy of It's Quint Firstborn of Jizath. I had to Google what it was. I didn't know. It's an uncommon from Lost Cavern of Ixalan. It's a 2/3 for 2 haste. It's red and green, and if you pay 2 more, you deal 2 damage. So this is a way to kill the Magus of the Moon. It's like a Flimton Kabu.
Yeah, but
yeah, I mean,
isn't this just
I guess
just straight up worse than Thornscape Battle Mage? Like, when is this card better than?
That is the. I guess you can cast it for cheaper.
No, Thornscape Battle Mage is 3 mana to do the thing.
Yeah, this one's.
Yeah, no, I'm just saying. I'm just saying you can pay 2 for a 2/3, but yeah.
Well, you can also pay 4/5 to kill an artifact as well.
Yeah. You can pay, you can kill artifacts, you also don't get interrupted. Like, if they have some way to kill It's Quint with a trigger on the stack, then, you're not going to get to actually kill their Magus. It'd be awkward if they had, Magus and, some other answer to a creature in their hand, and then you'd,
It's okay, I don't know.
That's a fair point.
Seems maybe. Like Thornscape Battle Mage should be just better. Maybe I'm missing something, but...
Unholy Heat without Delirium.
No,
but you still kill the Magus. Right? Yes, exactly. Yep, I mean, that sounds like...
Maybe this person didn't know that this was legal.
I couldn't blame them. I definitely... What is this card?
It doesn't seem very legal in Modern. If you look at the sets, it's legal. It's been printed. It's legal because of Time Shifted. I guess it's the same as Wall of Roots.
I was going to ask, Invasion is not legal in Modern, right? Invasion is not legal in Modern.
No.
Plane Shift.
No. Modern's, no, it's still
Wall of Roots, I think it's only...
Also, right?
Yeah, It's only Time Shifted and Mirage as normal sets. Wow. Yeah.
All right, we're learning something about the history as
well. Anyway, I think a very good top 8 of this tournament with the best decks at the top, Amulet and Yogg, and then you have the Rhino, Scam, Merfolk, Murktide, and also, as I said earlier, 4-color Omnath coming back. We've seen Nassif. I think he 4-0'd the prelim, and he's playing that deck a lot on stream, so definitely putting the deck a little bit more on the map, since it kind of went out with the Up the Beanstalk and Fury ban, but it was back with this top 8. And yeah, I mean, not that much to say about 4-color Omnath. It's the same card, and I've streamed this deck on Monday, super underwhelmed by Ren and 6. Like, honestly, just ever since I heard that the podcast with Tristan and how much he hated Ren and 6 in every deck, I kind of he kind of opened my eyes, because I never really thought that Ren was so bad, but every time Ren is bad, it's just so bad. It's just crazy how bad it is, and you don't even have Esper Sentinel as you had in the past, or even I think less Ragavans that you had in the past, because of Orc in general. Just X1s, there's just less X1s, and overall, that's the card I set out the most is Ren and 6 by far.
Yeah, I mean, probably Tristan was right all the way, but who knows?
He has such fascinating views. You have to admit that, Mengus. They're also different to what the average player would think, and he has such a particular way of expressing those views. I don't know. Just listening to Tristan is really a treat, I think.
He sometimes nails things so much ahead of time. Like the Ren and 6, actually, he said this for many times. He's like, this card is actually almost unplayable in Modern or whatever, and everyone's building it's the best card ever. And well, look how many Ren and 6s are there now. So, yeah. Okay, what are we looking at now?
Yeah, no, I was just looking at a Coffer deck, the top 8 challenge. But anyway, speaking of challenge, they have posted all of the results of 2023 best players in MTGO challenges. And I think it's a cool stat, and we should definitely spread. the names that have grinded the whole 2023 for this achievement, right?
Well, there's the
Yeah,
there are classics
So,
now. Danielakos, Mocked, and
all right, so who do we have? So highest number of matches. Or Daniela Kos with 1,827 matches in challenges and qualifiers this year. And highest number of top 32, we have Mogged with 153 top 32.
153.
And
that is a lot.
both these players are from Greece.
Oh.
So, you know, when they say that the MTGO challenges are Brazilian territory as well, I guess they're Greek territory in 2023. And we have highest number of top 8, once again Mogged with 48.
Wow.
Highest number of challenge and qualifiers wins, both Mogged and Daniela Kos with 12 wins.
That's one per month.
The first two
That's
stats
pretty
are the
good,
same.
actually, right? Like, even if they are somewhat small, they're still impressive. Honestly.
Like, that's really, that's very impressive, I think.
And they also tie.
Also, it's fun for them that it's
Can you explain...
Yes?
Can you explain me this one? Highest lower bound of 90% confidence interval on the win rate.
Yeah, so what they're doing is they're taking the win rate, but they're trying to adjust for the number of matches you played. Because obviously the more matches you played, the more sure we are that you didn't just get lucky. So at the extreme end, like if you played one match and then you stopped and you won that match, you have a 100% win rate, but it's not very useful to point out that you have that 100% win rate, right? So what they're doing is they're trying to adjust for that. So they've told you... they know it's within a range.
They only take a sample size.
Right. So, like, for example, when you look at the win rate
size.
matrices, you remember those? Like, when you see, like, how the matchups are, and they'll give you a range. Like, they're not going to say, this deck beats this deck X% of the time. Yeah, they're going to say X to Y% of the time, right? That's what this is, but for win rates for players instead of decks. So, that's what it is.
All right, so names are changing now. We have Jabberwocky with a measures win rate of 66%.
I mean, let's talk about this. Like, this is completely massive. This win rate in this amount of games across a year, this can, tell you a little bit of how good Jabberwocky is actually at playing the game.
Yeah, and it says in the next sentence, for comparison, Daniela Kos had a 57 win rate and Mogged had a 56 win rate. So that's just 10% of...
that's really, really, really big.
10% more of already good players, like very good players.
Yeah, that's the thing. Like, Jabberwocky is not playing against, like, random F&M dudes. So you see a lot of people mention this stat where they say the top pros win 65% or something like that at the time, but they win that much against other, like, players on the Pro Tour or GPs, right? Like, Jabberwocky is also playing, like, they're not quite, like, GP/PT level, but, like, he's playing against strong players. Like, he's gonna have to play against people like Mogged a lot, which drags down his win rate. So against the average player, Jabberwocky would have like an absolutely incredible win rate, I'm sure. But this is like, wow, like 66%, like you gotta say, that's very, very high. And like I know like 10% in the abstract doesn't sound like that much, but like 10% over the next person is, wow. That's really, really, really impressive, I have to say.
I just feel like anything that's over like 65 in a situation like this isn't. I just find it impressive. Like I understand this is not the PT as Anthony said or whatever, but this is still like somewhat like not an easy field, and it's just like
you're so toxic.
Oh, he's looking at my name. I mean, I don't play that many of those. I will expect my winner to be under. I will expect my winner to be like under 50% or something. I don't know, but
I can't check.
Yeah. I think that is impressive. Just speaks of the consistency of these players, specifically.
I will also say that these guys also have a particularly high win rate because they also play all the standard challenges where your win rate is higher. It's more possible for it to be higher than in other formats, I think. So especially the fact that these guys have played a lot of standard helps their win rate a lot. I know that there was similar data for modern specifically. In the same realm, and I think there was the top player, the player who won the most was someone called Sydney Guy, and I really want to know who this person is because I assume if you have the username,
Sydney Dude,
yeah, they'll be up Sydney Dude, yeah. I assume someone named Sydney Dude is from Sydney, but I don't know who this is. So if you're Sydney Dude and you're from Sydney, can you let someone can you let Mengu know who you are? Yes, because that would be cool. Congratulations to you, Sydney Dude, whoever you are. Very impressive. They had the highest win rate in Modern specifically, which I think is something that a lot of people... I think there's a lot of specifically Modern players, like people who play Modern specifically. Like a lot of people who play Standard are just, grinders in general, but a lot of people are specifically Modern grinders. So Sydney dude did very well, and right after him was our teammate Bullwinkle, who he won the next most after that. So yeah, those guys.
It is a...
Was that?
But Bullwinkle has a massive...
Yeah, he played like 4 times more, so
number of matches.
There was a much higher confidence interval for him.
Way more than 4 times, I think.
Yeah, I think it's about that, right? Yeah.
Let's
so
hope he can teach us how to play Modern. We want Bullwinkle to teach us.
Let's hope so.
Yeah, let's hope so.
The inventor of modern rhinos, as we know.
That absolutely he is, yes. But maybe it's very good then. I don't know. The guy with the highest win rate is the Rhinos Master, so maybe that's a vote.
We didn't play rhinos at the PT though.
Yes, that's true. Maybe that's a damnation on rhinos. Oh, well, we don't talk about that.
All right, let's continue through the formats. Let's talk about Standard, because that is the format that will be played in the RCQ season, which started last week. So, if your stores is running those, you might be interested in listening about Standard a little bit. As we've been mentioning last episode, we're putting Pioneer on a veto now until the PT. Not that there is any Pioneer large tournament anyway, so I think it's okay that we just start with Standard. So we will talk about the challenges. I think that is the most competitive format with deck lists. So yeah, let's kick things off with first and second place of Saturday Standard Challenge. Both are green-white toxic.
Well, this came out of nowhere. Right? It's banned, yeah, but it came out of nowhere, right? Like this deck just didn't really exist until this weekend, and then boom, first and second in the challenge, which is just awesome. I love that Standard. This happens in Standard sometimes, where like people didn't expect something, and then it's cyclical, and this pops up. But yeah, this came out. I think this deck kind of came from Japan. I think a lot of Japanese players were on this before and had success with it. And the big thing about this deck is that, well, okay, so if we look at like the best deck in Modern before the bans, it was Black Red Scam, and it was so good because it was very hard to attack. Like it was a fundamentally extremely solid deck, and it didn't have many weaknesses. The deck with a similar play rate in Standard leading up to this point was Domain. Like, Domain is by far the most popular deck. But the thing that's very different about Domain is that it has some very glaring weaknesses in terms of how slow and clunky it often is, right? And we've seen some people exploit that with the regular decks like midrange. Like, you play more cards like Deep Cavern or for example, at the P2, at Worlds, we really leaned on Liliana of the Veil to exploit the fact that Domain stumbles on itself so much. But the Japanese players figured out that you can just go way higher than that. You can go way stronger than that and just really play a deck that punishes. These decks were playing 12 Triomes and up the Beanstalk and slow removal spells, right? Like, alright, okay, so slower creature decks loop to Sunfall. Okay, we just play like all 1-drops. Crawling Chorus, you're gonna die before you Sunfall me. Okay? And I think this approach is like very, very strong against Domain, and that's why we've seen this deck suddenly come under. Like, they probably just swept up a whole bunch of Domain players on the way to a finals. And also, can you imagine playing bad Toxic and just you get to the finals and it's a mirror? You're like, okay, I did something right. Like, I definitely did something right. That's
I did lose to this deck. I don't remember when I played Standard. Like, I don't know which tournament I played in Standard. I'll probably ask you for help. But I did lose to this, and my opponent played like 2 Rot Priest or 3, and they just played the March, and I was like, what's going on?
That stacks up. That stacks up. The March is so good in this
I just died. Like instantly died. Like, it was
both.
Yeah.
It does everything.
Yeah. It was like something else. I was playing Arena also as well. I remember like just looking at my other screen or whatever, and it was then again I was like, I'm dead. Like, what?
How am I on 8 poison?
What?
Yeah.
What happened?
So the March
and also does that proliferate so much? Like, you have 3 experimental augury and 4 serum snare, so you don't even need to attack.
So it's in a way that like lets you do the red deck thing, right? Like, a lot of the strength of red decks is that you get to attack and then you can use your burst to finish them off once they've stabilized behind a board. But in this deck, you both have a lot of that reach in terms of proliferate. Like, if you think of proliferate as like each proliferate thing dealing basically 2 damage, like, these cards are pretty impressive, right? Like, if you've dealt damage to them, experimental augury is like you get a card, but then you also deal them 2 damage, and that you can actually play like a sort of long game there because you can't interact with poison. But I really wanted to highlight like how good the March of Swirling Mist is in this deck, because that card was a horrible card for most of the time when it's in Standard, but in this deck it's incredible. Like, it's a protection spell because you can save your own creature from removal. It's like a falter because you can just phase out all of their blockers and like kill them. And it also kind of combos with the Rot Priest because it triggers all of your Rot Priests in play. Like this card is just like this deck really uses some cards that were like not very good in a very strong way together. I think that's really appealing.
Just to explain how it works. So if you have 2 Venerated Rot Priest in play, and you have March, and you target your 2 Venerated Rot Priest, do you deal 4 Infect?
Yes, but if you have 6 creatures, then you deal 6. And you have 4 creatures, the opponents die. Dead.
You mean like each, like you have 3 creatures, you deal 6?
Yeah.
If you have 2 Rot Priests.
Let's say you have 2. Yeah. Let's say you have 2. Okay.
So
that's a lot.
This deck, it's like you cannot mess. Like you actually have to interact early. Like what this deck is doing is exploiting the fact that Domain is slow to interact. Like Domain has interaction, and that's why the deck is good. Like that deck is fundamentally a control deck, but it is slow. Like it's really relying on, I'm going to take some early damage and then like regain like my position with Archangel Wrath. But you know what? Like gaining life isn't very good against poison, right? So. And also, like, these effects, like, they're just, like, Archangel Wrath is 5 mana before, like, it kills something and makes a blocker. Like, that's often too slow against the Domain deck that can really the Poison deck that can really punish that. So, I think this is, like, a really good response to the Domain. So, if you, like, know that the metagame is full of Domain decks, you can play a deck like Bant Toxic to prey on it. And the deck, because it's standard, like, the decks are inherently, like, more flexible. So, it's not like you're just dead if you play against, like, Black, Red, or Esper or something. Like, you have a plan. Like, it may not be a favorable matchup, but you will have a plan. I think that's very important as well. Like, it's a deck that can exploit this weakness, but it's not an all-in deck in the way that you might often think of an Infect deck as being, right? That's, like, Toxic is not the same as Infect, I think.
Yeah, also Scrubb's Hive probably adds a lot on that angle, because imagine playing Infect with Bitter Blossom. I know this card's not Bitter Blossom, but, like, it's, like, a card that puts tokens, so it's actually good against specifically spot removal as well. And certainly has, like, I'm pretty sure you can get Hive and then just hold the Rot Priest and eventually go Rot Priest March or something and just get kills out of nowhere. This kind of things can actually happen.
That's the play pattern I think is good. Yeah. Absolutely.
Everyone has a knockout blow in the sideboard, but nobody's playing
well, when you get to the next challenge, you'll see. Spoiler alert.
Oh,
Right?
okay.
But knockout blow is
I remember
important.
now. I remember. I played the challenge with Mono-Red.
Oh,
I died to the Infect deck. I remember.
Kind of makes sense.
Yeah, they played 3
the tricks are kind of
They played 3 rounds of Red Priest. I tapped for like, I don't know, and yeah, I remember now. I just went to arena, looked back, and
so you're one of those MTGO grinder that double queues and plays Mono Red.
That is exactly what I did. Yeah.
No, I'm joking.
Yes, that's me. Exactly.
Cool.
Okay.
Now you know where all those knockout blows are coming for. This is just classic Mono Red. This is like very classic Mono Red. Like a lot of the time, you've seen like Mono Red be a little bit more flexible in terms of like trying to lean into a mid range playing with cards like Koth. But this is actually just I play a lot of cheap creatures and burn and I kill you sort of Mono Red. I want to highlight like the Urabrask's Forge. That card is really impressive in the Mono Red decks.
Urabrask's Forge. What is it? Oh, it's the enchantment. Artifact, Sorry, the artifact that makes a X1 that's bigger.
It was good. Bigger, this card was good. I played against, I don't know, decks with removal, and this card felt like my deck was not very good, but this card was good. Like, I wonder if it's even, like, playable out of Mono Red. Like, it was that good.
It was, like... Thing about this card is it really puts your opponent in, like, a tough position where, like, you really want to bring in, like, lots of... The kinds of cards that you bring in against the rest of the Mono Red deck are, like, really bad against Urabrask's Forge. So you bring in, like, cards like Cut Down, or, like, cards like Cut Down or like stuff like Knockout Blow or whatever, and they're just really ineffective against Urabrask's Forge. Even trying to make blockers is not good. Like you can't actually sit on Sheoldred forever, because it only gains you like 2 life a turn, and then like eventually they're just gonna start attacking with like a 5/1. And you're like, am I supposed to like chomp here? Like it's just like this card puts pressure on your opponent to actually turn the corner, and that's tough. I think. Because a lot of people will build their decks too defensively post-board against Mono Red, and Forge is really good at exploiting that. So, yeah, this card I think is like a big key to why these Mono Red decks are good right now, because they really punish your opponent for responding to the wrong plan.
There's one thing though, really like, but because of what you said, and also I felt like this playing with a card, it feels like this card's actually putting pressure, but it will work better in a more mixed strategy. Like, if you have Koth, that probably means Forge is better, because Forge makes them be forced to turn the corner, and Koth makes it so they can have less creatures. Mm-hmm. So it's actually like, I think maybe this should mean the modern deck can be a little bit more bigger, not like the other way around.
I think so. Yeah, that's a direction I think makes sense. I agree, because the whole thing is that like having an extra angle, like each extra angle is kind of multiplicative, right? Like if you have another angle and another angle and another angle, like it gets really hard for your opponent to answer all of them, as opposed to doing one thing really well and then also you have this forge. Like you have like a little bit less attacking, but you have forge and also Koth. It gets really hard for your opponent to interact meaningfully. Like suddenly they're like, oh, I guess I should bring in all my duresses, but sometimes duress is horrible when you just have like an all creature draw or something, and that's the spot you want to put your opponent in. Make it so they can have the wrong answer as often as you can. I think, yeah, that's why Forge mixes very well with cards like Koth, I think.
Standard's good. I like standard.
Yeah, I love it. Yeah, it's just great. I love it when these are the cards that like are effective. They're not cards like, I don't know, Curse Totem, where you're like, my opponent has activated abilities, so I'm going to put this card in my deck that says activated abilities don't exist, and then I beat them. And that's appealing on some level, but I love even more when the good cards are like Urarax's Forge, and it's like, oh, I have to figure out like what's good with this, because it's like not instantly clear, you know? Like, I think both things are cool, but I particularly love this. I think there's that element of discovery that I really enjoy.
All right.
What about the second deck, Anthony? Please let us know what you think about the second deck, because this is something I know you recognize this nickname. CFT Sock is the player who invented the Ratadabric deck when I played Standard the last time, when I focused on Standard the last time. And this deck has a lot of cards that definitely need an explanation. So, Slogurk the Overslime is a card that I've seen sometimes in Legacy with, Life from the Loam and Wasteland. But what does it do here?
A lot. I think so. This isn't really like, this kind of looks like it would be like an infinite combo deck, but it's not like an infinite combo. It just generates a ton of value. So we have this Relic of Legends thing with Rona, where like you can use it to basically generate. It's gonna discount all of your legendary cards in a way, right? Because you tap Rona for mana instead of looting, and then you cast a spell and it untaps. But here, the thing that's special is Inti, and Inti has like a really nice interaction with Slogurk as well. So I think the idea of this deck is that you're very good at outgrinding anybody, I think. And you have, the cards are just individually pretty powerful, right? They're all like legendary creatures, like they're all naturally going to be reasonably powerful. You have some interaction in terms of cut down and go for the threat, and especially post board. So, sometimes it's hard to unpack what CFT Socks do. I'm not gonna lie, but I think that's the idea of this deck, that you're just trying to be extremely good at grinding, but have enough creatures to always present a proactive plan. I could be missing something, to be honest, because I don't know. It's all these CFT Socks. You remember they also made the Spelunking deck, and that one was a real one to figure out as well. They just always make the wildest decks. I feel like we didn't do it justice, but that's my guess about what the deck is about.
Well, I mean, there might be something almost infinite with Relic of Legends and
almost infinite,
and Rona,
sure. Yes.
And I don't know, like there must be something here.
I think it's not quite infinite, but it's close.
Like if you get Ludovic and copy Rona with Ludovic, so you have two Ronas, right?
Oh,
so you can actually just play like
all your 2 mana once.
Yeah, like you play a 3 mana one, you play a slower, but you only play 1 mana.
Yeah.
You play Inti you generate 1 mana, for example. Right? You play extra
also,
Ronas, you generate more mana, and you also can loot if you want. You flip more cards. Maybe that's
Inti plus Rona is kind of sick, right? Oh my god.
Inti, Rona, and Relic of Legends together, they can surely do some things.
Well, I mean, even without the Relic, you just like loot, flip a card, untap, loot, flip a card.
And if you have Titania, you win an like a large amount of life, which I assume that's what Titania is for here. So I assume that's the direction, like you don't combo infinite, but like you just gain 20 life and draw 20 cards. I feel.
Yeah, you don't need to be infinite. You just need to have so much your opponent can never conceivably beat it, right? Like 20 is kind of the same as 200 in this regard.
I will think that's the direction.
Yeah.
Maybe if you can generate mana or something, then you can just play this Goose Mother for a bunch, but yeah, I mean,
I think that's what it does.
Yeah, it could be, but it's hard. Like, and also, well, once you do that, if you have a lot of mana, you can just play the Jace. With 20 mana, play the Jace, sack it, and then Takenuma, get back with a Slogurk, and then just Jace again and kill, right?
Oh, I think that is actually the kill, by the way. I think
that has to be the kill as well. The Slogurk killed Takenuma with Jace. I'm not sure. It's very hard to actually understand everything, but if I had to guess, that would be my guess. Yeah.
Yeah, so you just need to generate enough mana and cards that Jace is... Okay, so they don't actually go infinite. They just have to have enough that they can play like Jace a couple times. And Like, you don't even need that much for like Jace to kill against domain, right? Because they often like can't clock you. Like, if you ever go for the threat and you Jace them twice, they're probably gonna deck before they kill you.
This seems
a lot of the
somewhat
time.
similar to the Agatha Cauldron deck, but in Inti Shell, right? A little bit.
Yeah,
It seems a little
you
bit
get
like
real
this.
cards. Like, you're
Well,
just playing
different
like
card, yeah.
you know. Well, I think these cards are more real than the cards in that deck, to be fair. But
Yeah, but it's similar. Like, yeah, I mean, well,
yeah, same idea. I agree.
I think this is like you pick it up, you played 2 games or 3 games, and I assume some of the combos will actually happen. Like the hard thing here is just being the artist. Like this deck is definitely looks like they thought a lot about it. And building this kind of decks is extremely hard in my opinion, and they actually do it very well.
Yes.
But once the deck is built, figuring out the combos is way easier than actually, figuring out the combos when they do not exist. Like they
They
exist.
put them there for you.
Yeah, they put the effort for you, so you can pick up the deck. I will definitely, if I was trying to play PTQs or whatever, I will absolutely try to play this deck for, a league or a match or two in ladder. One, because you'll learn it, in case you play against it. But two, like, if this deck actually ends being good and it's so convoluted that we cannot actually know what's going on in the first side, well, your opponents also will not be able to do so, right? In a PTQ or whatever.
Yes.
And that's very good. That can give you a massive play advantage in that way. So definitely something I will try.
That makes sense. Like, anything unintuitive, I think it's really important to like immediately tackle, because like the value of that first league is so much higher with these decks that are just, you just look at them and you're like, I feel like I'm missing something maybe, which is how I really feel when I look at this deck. When I really look at most to see it, that person has to be the most fun deck builder in Magic right now. I think they just always have a banger. You're like,
I don't think it's close. I don't think it's close at all.
Yeah, I think they're the most fun deck builder for sure.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's easy.
So if you see a CFD stock deck, play the league with it first. You might play against it, you might play it, but either way, you really should get that first league, and so at least have an idea of what's going on. I don't think you'd get it just by looking, because we didn't. For sure.
Yeah. All right.
Anyway.
All right. Before wrapping it up, I want to talk a little bit about Legacy. And while, there isn't that many competitive events in that format, well, it was the format that I played last weekend in Sunday, and it was the winner is a good friend of mine, Matteo Blasi, on the Grixis Delver. So this is a deck that, of course, Javier knows well, as he's the one that he played, that Javier played in Eternal Weekend Prague, and also Blasi top-hated that event as well. So he got the job done with a couple of Stifle, this time in the flex slots. And I want to know your opinion, Javier. What do you think about the card Stifle, and why Legacy old school players especially love the card so much? And yeah, just like, would you play it in Legacy nowadays?
Well, Stifle, I think it's fundamentally a bad card. That's how I think Anthony will put it. Like, it's just a bad card. That's it. Like, the power level of the card is very bad compared to the rest. That was not exactly the case, or at least not like in that exaggerated way in 2013 or so, because the other cards were worse, but it's still a bad card. However, it does have some important applications. But let's just keep in mind, like, Stifle got to be like a staple in an environment where the top combo deck was Storm. And you can probably imagine Stifle being good against Storm for different reasons. But it's not the case anymore. So what do you need for Stifle to be good? Well, one thing is definitely close deck lists. I think that's a very important start. Two, it needs to counter things that your deck is not very good at countering already. Like, against initiatives, for example, Stifle will be an acceptable card because, it actually lets you counter an initiative card through Cavern of Souls, for example. And I think if this deck is good enough at being a fair level deck that it can play just slots that are good against this type of cards, that's a situation where I think Stifle is good. And the other scenario is where you're playing against a deck that's so good against you in the late game that actually the potential Storm Rain is just good enough for this to be good, which is unlikely. But if you're playing against like a 4-color deck that is very heavily, like Ura, but Ura is not that bad of a matchup, right? Like, you're playing Pass of Progress because of that reason. Like, you can still win some games. But I'm not a big fan of Stifle, but I don't know if the paper metagame is such as this, but for example, playing against Depths, Stifle's pretty good because you can actually just like get him in the middle. if you play against something like goblins on initiative, as I said, like this card, you can actually stifle, some like if you stifle a ring leader out of a Cabinet of Souls, that's a huge win, and you cannot do that without the counter spells. Like I think against goblins, that's also
Muxus.
Yeah, Muxus. You can just Muxus or ring leader. Like they spend the whole deck build towards playing this payoff, right? And they play Cabinet of Souls, which is vulnerable to Wasteland because they want to have this resolved, and just play Stifle. And sadly, they're losing the whole deck in that regard, right? So I think that's very good, like a very good spot for Stifle. Like I think the card's bad, but specifically Legacy, also in Modern, like there's no bad or good, on absolute level in terms of like there are situations where this is good, and if those decks are playable or are good, I think Stifle is the right place to be. I don't know Mateo, but definitely, like, if he knows what he's doing and decides to play the Stifles for these reasons, I think it's actually totally reasonable, I would say.
You're saying that Stifle was good because people didn't expect it. Maybe like next event, people will expect it, so Stifle will be less good. And like in 6 months, Stifle will be good, maybe good again for one tournament.
I think it's like a plus. Like if your opponent knows for sure to have Stifle, it's a little bit worse. But I don't think it's huge. Like, the most important part is how good it is when it's good. Like, if the metagame has decks that are bad against Stifle. Like, if you're playing a mirror match, your opponent, knowing your opponent has 1, 2, or 3 Stifles, obviously makes your life better, but it's not a great card. Like, the games often still go long, and it's a dead top deck. It doesn't do anything against the threats. It is not a very good card. Just like, if you can only counter lands, it's not great. It's just fine. Like, you need the other decks for it to be good.
You can counter Orc.
Sure, that's not great, right? Like, that's worse than any other card in the deck, kind of.
No,
like,
I know.
Stifle, by definition, it's a card that's very rarely going to be dead, because, abilities tend to be in the stack in Magic, so you can often counter some things, and yeah, most every deck plays, like fetch lands, or you can just Stifle a Fable of the Mirror Breaker or something, like Stifle always has like a use, but I think you need Stifle to be actually good sometimes. Like good, like I said, like just depths or, goblins or initiative, all these kind of decks for this to be worth it. But that said, those matchups tend to not be particularly easy for Delver. So if they are very played, but you still want to play Delver because you want to punish the decks that beat these decks, like Doomsday, that's the spot where speaking of which, also Doomsday a deck where, you want to have Stifle. I think that's the metagame where I will play Delver. I mean, Stifle and Delver. A metagame where there's a lot of style decks, but there's enough style decks that actually the decks preying on those will be there as well. That will be my analysis of the situation.
All right. And yeah, I think that was a great answer. Thank you so much, Javier, for these in-depth answer. I always know that whenever I have a doubt, I have the Karnies Discord to ask those questions. Because I like to put you on the spot, I know that you always have an answer to those doubts that I have. Anyway, my tournament didn't go well with Delver. I went 2-3. Actually, I faced the 4 Chalice of the Void matchup with, it shouldn't be that bad, but I just always found myself on the draw against Chalice somehow. And overall, I can't complain with my weekend luck, I would say. So, I'll take that. But overall, that's going to be it for us, this podcast. Do you guys have anything else to share with the listeners?
I will actually like to ask you a question. Do you think Delver is well positioned now in Legacy compared to 1 year ago or 2?
Oh, about that, I don't know necessarily, but I can tell you that it's definitely better positioned than like a few months ago. I think in Prague, during the tournament weekend, control was like super high, whereas now I think it's like going on a downtrend. Like if you see Matteo top 8 bracket, he played against Infect Sneak and Show, and those matchups seem super scary for control, and probably one of the reasons why this deck made the top 8, like 2 different Infect players and a Sneak and Show, is because they preyed on control decks a lot. So I would say that the metagame definitely is now back where control isn't dominating, so you don't see as many Carpet of Flowers and such. Again, like I played against 0 control decks and against 4 Chalice of the Void decks, which Delver should be decent against. Like I don't mind playing that matchup, right?
Okay, thank you. No, it was good. I don't play that much Legacy, overall, but I will play the showcases and such, I think. So that's a good answer. Thank you. That was useful.
Yeah, I would say that you can definitely play Grixis Delver, and if you play well like you do and have a proper luck, I think you can definitely top 8 the tournament.
Okay.
So yeah, overall, I said overall a lot, but anyway, it's like that's it for this episode. We'll be back for sure next week. And Anthony, do you have anything to say about this episode? Anything last?
No, nothing in particular.
share?
No, not really. I think I'm good.
Actually, I have one thing to
Oh.
say. I have to thank John
Oh.
for joining
True.
the Patreon. Patreon.com/Karnies. It just flashed in now, this thing at the very last second. Thank you, John. And again, if you want to support the show, patreon.com/Karnies to join the Discord and share in Mengucci cuisine what do you think about the Chicago style pizza. That seems to be the most discussed topic in that page. But yeah, that's it. Thank you so much for listening, and I'll see you next time.
Bye.
Cheers.